Testing. Can you hear me now? Hello. Sound check. So, reader, can you hear me? Hello, hello. Mic testing. Hello. Hello, testing. Good afternoon. This is Stumps, the reader post-game show from the Border Gavaskar Trophy, and we're live with the recap of the first day's play in the fourth test at Melbourne. Australia ends the day on 311 for six. And it's a bit of a curate's egg. After two sessions when the Indian bowlers managed to take just one wicket each, the loss of four wickets in the final session, mostly against the run of play, probably put Australia a little bit on the back foot and got India back into the game. The story of the day's play, though, was in the first session, which was dominated by the teenage debutant Sam Constas. Uh, Before the start of play, in fact, in the lead up to this game, the Australian coach, Andrew McDonald, suggested that the idea of giving a debut to the young opener was in order to give something different for Jasprit Bumrah to think about. Well, that worked. Sam Constas came out in the second over of Bumrah. He tried a reverse scoop, which didn't connect. He tried another scoop, which also didn't connect. But once he got the range, Sam Constas took Bumrah on in an attacking blitz that produced 34 runs of 33 deliveries. Significantly, uh, three of two of the three most expensive overs bowled by Bumrah were bowled today, both against Sam Constas. What this did on the ground was put India on the back foot straight away. It also allowed Usman Khawaja at the other end the space that he needed to work his way into the game. Usman Khawaja has gotten out four times to Jasprit Bumrah in these first three tests. And in this particular innings, the first spell of Bumrah's, which was six overs for some 38 runs, Khawaja only had to play three deliveries. This was probably the biggest gain of that opening partnership because what it meant was that Bumrah was not allowed to break through early. The runs came very fluently, and by the time Constance got out, what had happened was that the ball had gotten significantly older. The opening spell of Bumrah was done, and Manas Labuschagne had the luxury of coming in with runs on the board. This then translated down the line because Manas Labuschagne settled in, Ma- and his partnership with Usman Khawaja meant that Steve Smith was then in a position to come in a good position with the team in a good position. There was some. Hey Rajesh, how are you doing? There were some points that India will need to go back to the dressing room and think about. One is the choice of team itself. In a fairly interesting move, India opted to leave out Shubman Gill, who interestingly had made his debut on this ground on December 26, 2010, and played a good hand in a game that India ended up winning. Shubman Gill, the decision to bench him is going to get considerable attention in the media. There are two ways of looking at it. One is that India was giving India was taking the option of having Washington Sundar come in, which gives them two advantages. One is two spinners on a wicket, where if the game goes the distance, spin might come into play on days 4 and 5. The other is that Shubman Gill, thus far in this series, has looked very comfortable as soon as he comes into bat. But he hasn't shown the aptitude or the discipline needed to play the test innings. He's made pretty 20s and 30s and gotten out three times to half volleys, where he played very casual shots. And the fact that he's been benched in this particular game just might remind him of the value of a test, uh, of being part of a test team. It might help him sort out his mental game and his attitude. But that said, what this tells you is that India is still not sure of the quality of its top order batting. In this particular game, the chances are that Rohit Sharma will play in the top three. He was at number 6 in the previous two games. Uh, Indications are, or at least the team list shows him opening with uh, Yashasvi Jaiswal and KL Rahul coming in at number 3, but there is every chance that that might be switched over. In the meantime, back to the play itself. The first two sessions were very clearly dominated by Australia, though in the second session, India did manage to pull back a little bit, if not in terms of taking wickets. India only had the one wicket of Manas Labuschagne in that session. But if not in terms of taking wickets, India did manage to significantly stop the flow of runs. The second session produced just about 64 runs in some 28 overs. The third session was better in terms of run scoring, but then again, the loss of 4 wickets, out of which several of the wickets fell to nothing shots. There was the one great delivery that Bumrah bowled was to Travis Head, who fell for a rare duck. But players like Mitchell Marsh, for instance, who played a nothing pull without ever getting into position against Bumrah, literally gifted their wickets away and undid a lot of the good work that the earlier batsmen had done. At this point in the game, at the end of the play on day one, it's hard to say which of the two teams is in a more comfortable position. India will think that with the 4 wickets that it took in the final session, and with the fact that the ball is still relatively new, it's just 9 overs old. It's just about no, it's just about 5 overs old at this point. India has a chance of starting strong on the morning of day two. Bumrah will be operating with the new ball, and Akash Deep is shown in the brief spell that he bowled in the late in the evening that he is a better exponent of the new ball than Mohammad Siraj. The two of them will fancy their chances, particularly with the tail, the Australian tail facing them. Pat Cummins is at the crease. He will be followed by Mitchell Stark, Nathan Lyon, and Scott Bolland, who's come into the Australian side at the expense of the injured Josh Hazelwood. Against that, a statistic is that Australia in Melbourne, whenever it has batted first and scored 300, except for one occasion several years ago, has never lost a test match. So, of the two teams, it is likely that Australia will be feeling in a better position. The first hour will be determinative. If India breaks through, if India breaks through the Australian lineup, it will then fancy its chances of batting deep and actually getting into a lead. Uh, Against that, if Smith and Cummins settle back down and put more runs on the board, then India will definitely be under pressure. Uh, like we said in the teaser to this particular program, this is a interactive show with readers' opinions and their questions being welcome. We have the first question from Ritabrata Roy. Did I pronounce that right? Uh, the question is, did we miss a trick by not sending Shami for the last two tests? I think the reason why Shami hasn't come to Australia is that the management and the physios and support staff back in India are still not sure that he is completely recovered. And they really don't want to take a chance on a half fit bowler. So, would we have benefited from having Shami here? Very definitely. Shami operates wonderfully well with the old and the new ball. He can make it swing in the air and move off the seam. But again, I mean, do you really want to risk uh, a bowler who is probably not fully fit? Is the question. Prasanna has a question, which is, how do you think will the postie session pan out? Well, I mean, the postie session is over, right? What India did manage to do was take 4 wickets, which is good. What Australia managed to do was put a lot of runs on the board. They are in excess of 300 at this point. So, yeah, Amit Sasrabuddhe has a question, Prem. What's your view on the efficacy of Siraj or lack thereof? See, the thing with Siraj is he gets the ball to move off the wicket and he gets it to move both ways. You saw that even today. He was beating the outside edge. He was uh, thudding into Labuschagne's pads repeatedly. The problem is that he is not consistent with his length. Um, so he tends to go a bit too short too often. The thing about watching Siraj bowl is it looks wow when you see the ball slipping past the edge of the bat. But that said, the point is to take the edge, not miss it. And Siraj, I think, tries too hard too often, and with the result that there are just those many loose balls which get put away, and the good balls uh, haven't really been penetrative enough to get the wickets. What is particularly concerning about Siraj's bowling is you would imagine that a bowler who can consistently move the ball away off the seam should be finding the edge a lot more often than he is. That's something for him and the team think tank to think about. Another question, uh, how do I pronounce your name? Ananurang Noor. Okay, sorry. I don't quite know how your name is pronounced, but the question is after all the thoughts, the captaincy could have been more proactive. Harshit Rana for Siraj might also have been a better option. We can second guess these options, but Harshit Rana in the games that he has played hasn't looked particularly penetrative either. As far as the captaincy is concerned, I thought in the morning session it was flat. Particularly, India looked sort of out of sorts when Sam Constance came after them. The second session I thought was actually quite good because while they didn't take wickets, what India did successfully was manage to curtail the flow of runs, and that helped to build a little bit of pressure on Australia. Aslam Hunani wants to know if I think that Australia, after having good runs on day one, India still stands a chance. Yeah, sure. Uh, it India stands a chance, particularly if it can bowl Australia out early in the morning for not too many more runs. If it can keep Australia, say, to under 350, uh, the wicket should be decent to bat on. Uh, Australia's taller bowlers will get much better bounce on this track than the Indians got, which is going to be a bit of a problem for the batters. But if they actually apply themselves and play Test cricket, I think you will. I think they have the opportunity to actually equal and maybe even surpass Australia's score. It's all going to depend not on the wicket or the bowling, but the attitude that the Indian batsmen bring to the contest. Tabilex wants to know my take on the Kohli-Conners collision. Look at that replay. What you notice is that Virat Kohli is walking in a particular line, Sam Constance is walking in a particular line. There is at least a yard or a little bit more between the two of them. And then Virat changes the line and walks at Constance and bangs into his shoulder. That was clearly a collision, deliberate collision by Kohli. And I think that is completely unfortunate. What it shows is just how much Constance got under the skin of the Indians. Just before that, if you remember, there was that back and forth with Mohammad Siraj. Uh, Kohli's aggression is is two parts, right? In one sense, it helps keep all his teammates up on their toes, but he carries it a bit too far too often, and I think this is one of those times. Uh, Again, I'm going to call you Anand because I really can't pronounce your name. The comment is that Sundar, when Khwaja was batting, would have been an option. He came in too late for my liking. I agree totally. I think Washington Sundar was bowled well after the 50th over, and that's way too late. If you're picking him as a bowler who can bat, you did need to try him out. Not just against Labuschagne, but particularly against Usman Khwaja, the left-hander. Yes. Um, Prasanna wants to know how I think the wicket will play out in the morning session tomorrow. Look, there will be bounce. This is a new ball. There is grass on the wicket. There is a good 6 millimeters of grass, which does give you that springy kind of bounce if you hit the hard lengths. Uh, Early morning, today had cloud cover. If that cloud cover persists tomorrow, again, it will assist swing and seam a little bit. Much is going to depend on I think more than the lines, the lengths that the Indians bowl, they have to make the Australian batsmen play, and they have to make them play outside the off stump. If you look at their bowling today, a lot of it was targeting the stumps. But the problem with that is if you miss your length, runs are easy to score, particularly on the leg side. Um, I thought the Indian bowlers didn't really target the outer edge of the Australian batsmen as much as they could have. They're going to need to make some changes to that in the morning session. Aslam Hanani says that Bumrah is the only bowler who's showing some spine. Would Arshdeep Singh have been? Look, the problem with these kind of things is there is no quantitative way of answering this. Would Arshdeep have worked? Maybe, maybe not. It's equally possible that Arshdeep would have been playing in this and have been ineffective. You have to work with the team that you've picked, and this, for better or worse, is the team that we've picked. But yes, I agree with the point that thus far the Indian bowling attack is way too dependent on Bumrah striking, and you can't have that. That puts undue pressure not just on Bumrah, but it also, if you look at the post lunch session, for instance, when Bumrah did not open the bowling in the second session, the bowling totally looks flat when he's not at one end, and that is letting Australia off the hook repeatedly. Look at even the third session when Bumrah took out 2 wickets. You would have expected that 2 wickets falling quickly, that to the wickets of Head and Marsh, and before that Labuschagne, obviously. But when Head and Marsh fell in the space of, I think, about 12 deliveries, you would have expected the Indians to go for the kill, instead of which what happened was that Bumrah had to be rested, and Smith and Carey found their feet and counterpunched. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a problem if this continues. Srihari Nair says, will more and more opposition teams be now tempted to take Bumrah on? Is that the only way of countering the Bumrah effect? Look, it's not just the Bumrah effect, right? The thing is, if you're just going to, if you think of the top, if you think of the first three tests and the way the openers, particularly Nathan McSweeney, played, he was parked on top of the crease. He was allowing Bumrah to bowl the lines and lengths that he wanted. And when you do that to a bowler of world class, he's going to, he's going to work on his bowling plans. He will bowl in a particular fashion. He will test both your inside and outside edges and your pads and your wickets. And there is nothing to stop him from doing that. You have to counterattack. You have to, uh, you can't just, okay, the Constance style of batting is a bit over the top. Constance just pulled it off. I don't know how many other international batsmen are going to be able to do that, but you have to be proactive when you're playing and when you're facing the new ball, particularly when you're facing a bowler like Bumrah. You can't just stay parked at the top of the crease and allow him to do whatever he wants. So I would imagine that yeah, other teams will be looking at how Constance played, adapting it to their own needs, and trying to make sure that Bumrah doesn't get to just bowl the way he wants to for as long as he wants to. Uh, Rahul wants to know if Harshit was a better option instead of Siraj. Look, Siraj has done well in Australia before. Harshit hasn't done enough to show that he is definitely the better option. Um, and also, there is the fact that Harshit and Akashdeep are almost similar bowlers. They are hit the deck, bowlers who bowl line and length and bowl very straight with just marginal movement of the seam. So you might end up with two bowlers who bowl the same kind of thing. Tubby Lex wants to know if Kohli will be given a ban. I'd be surprised if the match referee does not uh, call him and Constas for a bit of a chat. The maximum that will happen is a bit of a fine. I don't think there will be a ban. Australia won't want to risk that, I think, or the ICC won't want to risk that. Uh, so no. Parisa Shivsharan says Virat Kohli is known for intense altercations in India-Australia Test. Do these fiery exchanges boost his performance or distract him from his game? Well, we'll know when Virat Kohli comes out to bat. Um, what I can say about some of the more over the top displays by Kohli is that it's not really doing either him or the fielding side any real good. Um, After that altercation, how did Constance react? If you look at what his score was at that point, he was on 28 or some such, and he took Bumrah down in the over following that. I mean, he first took Siraj down, and then he took Bumrah down in the over following that. So what did you do? You managed to fire up a batsman who, on the basis of what we saw, really didn't need firing up. So I'm not sure why he does these things. I'm not sure what the quantitative outcomes are. Uh, I wish he would just let his play do the talking. Sumit Pednekar, don't you think Kohli should talk with his bat rather than the actions which he does on the ground? Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's almost a no-brainer, right? Viraj S should Rohit step down as captain? I don't know. Who are you going to? Uh, who's the next in line? It would be Bumrah. But think about this. Do you want Bumrah at this stage of his career to carry not just the burden of being probably the only strike bowler in India, and on top of that, being captain? I know he did very well in that dual role in the first test in Perth, but carrying it permanently, is that what you want? Particularly, I would imagine that India would need to manage Bumrah's work burden a lot, and I don't know how that'll play out if Bumrah were to take over as captain. But one thing for sure, at the end of this Australian series, that is one of the questions that not just fans or commentators, but even the management is likely to be asking, and those questions will intensify around the time the team is to be picked for the England tour next year. Parissa Shivsharan Smith remains key and could be the difference between Australia getting to 400 or being bundled out 400, 350. Absolutely, yes, except with the caveat that for me, the bigger key is, can Pat come and support him? And then can Mitchell Stark come in and play a cameo of the kind that he is known for? Smith will probably take his time to settle back in, and for him to be effective, he needs to get that time. For that, wickets should not fall at the other end. Prasanna, do you think Australia adding another 200, 250 tomorrow in the first session would have set this match in Australia's favor? Well, if Australia adds 250 in a session tomorrow, something extraordinary would have happened. Uh, I doubt that. Even Australia adding 50 to 60 runs in the morning session for the loss of, say, one wicket will really swing the match in Australia's favor. Uh, which is why, again, at the start of this program, I said the first session is going to be incredibly crucial for both sides, actually, but for India more because India needs wickets and needs wickets fast and early. Uh, Prasanna, again, should Kohli be banned for a match or two? Look, what should be done, particularly for a repeat offender, and what the ICC will do are two different things. I don't think the ICC is going to ban Kohli. Should he be banned? Well, your take is as good as mine, I guess. Like I said, I'm not a fan of this sort of over the top acting up. But yeah, it's what you get. Tushar Gavankar, do you think Sam Consters goes against the opponents like Rishabh Pant? I'm sorry, I don't see how Sam Consters is going to. Uh, are you asking if Sam Consters will be the Rishabh Pant for Australia? Well, I think Sam Consters could be Australia's answer to the let's say, retirement of David Warner. Since then, Australia has been searching for an opener to take over. Constas, from what we've seen of this inning so far, and the caveat here is that you need him to play 2, 3 innings, go up against this kind of bowling on a few more occasions before you can actually make a call. But based on what he has done so far, he has what it takes to be Australia's long-term opener. And remember that he has age on his side. Um, he will also, I am guessing, be given a lot of leeway by the Australian management um, to get over a few failures and to calibrate his game properly. One of the statistics that the broadcast team put out, which struck me as significant, was that this was the first, I think, opening partnership of 50 plus in quite some time for Australia. And that is something that Constance can address. Ranveer Phukan, India's comeback in the final session to not allow Australia to get away was commendable. I was fearing the worst at lunch. Yeah, well, I was fearing the worst at lunch, and I was also fearing the worst at tea. In each of those sessions, India just managed to take a wicket each. And more to the point, I thought in both those sessions, the Indian bowlers, including Bumrah for that matter, were considerably flat, surprisingly flat. Uh, they were not proactive enough, and the field was uh, particularly in the session between lunch and tea. If you look at the field setting, it was like it was an in-out field, and all that India seemed to be doing with both the ball and in the field was waiting for the opposition to make mistakes, uh, which is very surprising when you consider that this is the first day of a test match. You would expect both bowlers and fielders to have been far more proactive. I think, despite the fact that we kept the runs down in that middle session, we kind of lost the plot a little bit there. Whose day is it? Would you say 55-45 in favor of Australia? Yeah, definitely. 55-45 sounds fair. India gets the 45 largely for the fact that it managed to take four wickets, including the very crucial wicket of Travis Head for a duck in that fourth session. Australia gets the 55 because 300 runs on the board is 300 runs on the board. And at some point tomorrow, India is going to bat. You can't quite predict what will happen, but the one thing that you need to keep in mind is that the two Australian opening bowlers, Cummins and Stark, will likely get a lot more bounce out of this wicket than the Indian bowlers, who are not as tall and not prone to hitting the deck quite as much. Both of them will get seam movement, obviously, but then the Indians have been getting it too. I think the difference will be in the bounce and the pace. And if we hadn't taken those four wickets, yeah, India would have been considerably worse off. And it looked at one point, uh, if you remember, in the final session, India didn't break through till after the first drinks break. At that point, with what 5 hours of play gone, I thought India was really under the pump. A lot of interesting questions. One thing that I notice is that nobody is really on the questions and among the fans. There's no real questions being asked about Shubman Gill's omission. What do you guys think? Would you say it's a good call? Would you say that Gill needs a wake up call? Ranveer has a question. Should Akash Deep have been given the new ball ahead of Siraj? Uh, I think the qualified answer to that is yes. Siraj is being given the new ball on the basis of past history. Akashdeep's advantage is that he gets the ball to bounce a lot more. If you saw that last wicket that the wicket of Alex Carey, uh, it was almost good. It was just back of a length. It wasn't really short. The ball moved just enough to make the difference between the middle of the bat and the edge of the bat. But what really got that wicket was the bounce that took even Alex Carey, who should be used to these conditions, by surprise. He does hit the deck hard, and he does deserve a lot more overs with the hard new ball, I would think. No comments about Gill, guys? Nobody has an opinion? Because, I mean, frankly, I thought that uh, it was an interesting move by the team management. Uh, yeah, Prasanna just made the point about Gill and also Kohli, Rohit Sharma, etc., all needing a wake-up call. In the case of Gill, I think the thing is, I remember somebody once talking about the curse of talent, and I think that's Gill's problem. He's cursed with too much talent. It all comes too easy for him, and because of that, he doesn't seem to take it seriously enough. He doesn't seem to want to put in the hard yards to and he doesn't seem to respect the conditions, the match situation, and the opposition bowlers enough. uh, 3 times in these last three test matches he's given away his wicket playing nothing shorts at half volleys. For a batsman who has such fluent stroke play, uh, that is criminal. And maybe a bit of time on the bench will wake him up a little bit. I hope so. Um, how else does can one expect India to post a bit? No, that's for sure. You need your top four to function. The reason why Australia is in a good position in this particular test, or is in a better position than India in this particular test at this point of time, is the top four have all crossed 50. You could, if you're a cup half empty type, say that none of the top four kicked on and made those starts count. But the fact is that they all had partnerships. The the top three wickets, the first three wickets had significant partnerships, which basically meant that in the previous matches, one of the issues for Australia has been that it kept losing wickets in a heap until it came down to Travis Head. This time, India wasn't able to make one wicket get parlayed into two or more, and that is what turned the pressure from the batting unit onto the bowling unit. And yeah, it's going to need We talked about Gill's attitude. Yashasvi Jaiswal, for all his talent, will also need to uh, sort of rethink his attitude to figure out that he can't score off every ball. Uh, he is a fluent stroke player, but he also needs to, uh, I think, internalize that Test cricket requires some discipline alongside the talent. Prasanna goes, how do you manage to remember so many stats about how who scored above 50 and all the other numbers that you keep talking about? Well, I mean, uh, I know that I'm only doing this live. I'm also doing session recaps on my Substack blog. But uh, look, I mean, even when I was doing cricket before and now when you're watching, there are two things you're doing. One is you're watching minutely. The other is that you're constantly making notes. I've got a pad here and a Word doc off to one side of the screen that is filled with all of these things. Some of the stats are what you notice yourself or what you think is significant, and so you try to generate those statistics. Like for instance, the fact that post uh, the anyway, uh, you do put down significant stats because that helps when you're writing about the game, and it helps you explain certain facets of what happened. Uh, and the fact that you pay minute attention and you make notes, I suppose, fixes it in the head. Honestly, I'm not as good at stats as some of the broadcast commentators are. They have the advantage of having somebody feed them the stats, but still. Harish Kotian wants to know, should Kohli be banned for the collision? And I'm guessing that Harish Kotian logged in just now because that question was answered about 3 times. Should he be banned? Well, I mean, I think he should be given exemplary punishment. I don't know if that is a ban, but serious action needs to be taken. Uh, Cricket is a no contact sport. I don't care what your excuse is. Uh, getting into an opponent's space and actually physically interacting with him is a no no. Will he be banned is a different question. My guess is he won't. What makes you so passionate about the gentle people's game from Prasanna? I'm not really. I mean, I don't watch T20s. Uh, I very occasionally watch ODIs, but only if there is a narrative to it and if there is a context to that ODI. It has to be some kind of tournament that matters. I love Test cricket though because both the shorter versions of the game are one note. It's just about who can hit more fours and sixes. Uh, as far as Test cricket is concerned, and you saw that play out even today, uh, it's more operatic. It's there is a lot of crescendos and diminuendos. There is a narrative to it, and I'm not I'm not a cricket reporter. I did cricket reporting for Rediff for about 5 years, starting 1996. But I would think I'm more of a reporter, maybe stretching it a bit, a storyteller. And for a storyteller, you want that narrative, and narratives require arcs. They need crescendos, they need diminuendos, they need uh, what storytellers call beats. And Test cricket, particularly between two good sides, provides that kind of narrative. So, yeah, that explains the passion. But keep in mind that that passion is limited purely for tests. Harish Kotian, Prem, will it be a problem for India if Australia score 400 plus? Will batting be difficult in the fourth innings? Uh, Batting is not exactly easy out there even now. One of the things that I don't know if you noticed is that the odd ball is actually stopping a little bit. Uh, that happens when there is grass, and if the ball keeps hitting a particular point of the turf repeatedly, what is going to happen is that it will create a little divot. When the ball hits that particular point, it can stop a little bit and come on. So batting is difficult now. Batting will be difficult in a different way on days 4 and 5 if the test goes the distance. What is India's problem if Australia score 400 plus? The big problem is India wants to win. India needs to win in order to have a reasonable chance of making the WTC final. For India to win, they will need to score runs. They'll need to score runs fast, and they're facing an opposition bowling lineup that knows how to bowl on these kind of conditions. Reasonably speaking, India will need to take a lead of at least 100 on the second innings. Think about it. We're already one day over. Uh, at what rate of scoring does India need to go in the remaining on days 2 and 3 to get to that 100 and then put pressure on Australia, bowl Australia out, and hit off whatever runs are required? Can it be done? Yeah, well, I keep going back to the Calcutta test. Um, India has pulled off miracles. The Calcutta test is one. The GABA on the last BGT tour was another. India has performed miracles in the past. On balance, I don't see it happening here. I think if Australia do get to 400, India will be chasing the game throughout and playing more to save the game than to win it. Ranveer Pukan dropping Gill was harsh, especially to accommodate a second spinning all rounder. Issue is compounded further by the fact that the most droppable batsman is the one who cannot be dropped. Um, I don't know whether Ranveer is looking at Rohit or at Virat when he says most droppable batsman. I presume Rohit. Um, yeah, well, that's what happens when you name somebody as a captain, right? The question of dropping him doesn't arise. Anybody remember how uh, Anil Kumble retired? He was captain of the side and he realized that he wasn't pulling his weight. And so midway through the series, he just gave up. He said, I'm quitting. You don't expect that to happen over here, but was dropping Gill harsh? Like I said a little earlier in this program, I think Gill needs a wake up call. Uh, the question of who he was dropped for and whether we needed a second spinner, I think the rest of the match is going to give us answers to that. It is not the choice that I would have made, is one thing I would say. Uh, Here's something to think about. We keep saying that we need to pick these bowlers who can bat, and increasingly we are picking batsmen who can bowl. Jadeja has become a batting all rounder as opposed to a bowling all rounder. And outside of Indian conditions, I would say that Washington Sundar is also a batting all rounder. Uh, so why are we picking batting all rounders? Because we can't trust our top batsman. And that is something the management needs to think about. How long are you going to keep doing this? How long are you going to say that you can't take pure bowlers because you can't depend on your batsman, your pure batsman, to score runs? It's ironic. None of our top five, none of our top six actually bowl. And we expect our bowlers to also bat. Parissa Shivsharan says our bowlers did pick up wickets in the dead overs today, but the issue is that we are very pessimistic about even 400 being put up because we don't trust our batters one bit. Yeah. Uh, Against that, yours is the cup half empty view. So, just for fun, let's take the cup half full view and say we've had some bad outings with the bat, but the players who are doing duty are all pedigreed. Sooner or later, they have to turn around, just like the Australian batsmen have turned it around, right? Hopefully, this is the game where they do turn it around. What will be interesting for me is to see the attitude of the batsmen when they come out, the Indian batsmen when they come out to bat. I want to see if there's been a lot of talk about intent, and apparently, intent means just going hard at every ball that is bowled to them. Uh, I want to see if lessons have been learned. I want to see if the team shows the needed application to actually play test innings, which doesn't mean blocking every single ball. I think that's counterproductive against bowlers of the class of Cummins, Stark, Boland, and even Nathan Lyon for that matter. Uh, it is finding that right balance between attacking and defending. And so far, we haven't shown signs of that balance. Um, I want to see if this is the innings where we do. The show has been going on for close to an hour now, and we seem to be running out of questions. If there's nothing further, can we call it a day and get back to this at the same time tomorrow? Everybody? All right, then. That's what we'll do. Over and out from the Stump Show for day one. We will be back with, again, live interaction on day two. Look forward to the conversation. This was fun. And it's been a long time since I had this kind of fun. So thank you very much for logging in. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye bye.